Before I get started, I just wanted to clarify something. I sent a tweet before I came here saying that to fuel for this presentation, I had gone to the 7-Eleven and I was eating Frito pie, and I got all of these people back who scolded me saying I should be eating healthy local Northampton foods. I was not eating Frito pie, I was at the 7-Eleven, but tomorrow I promise I'll eat healthy local Northampton foods. I have to admit, this was a somewhat difficult panel to prepare for. Thinking about what is success, what is convention, what it isn't, how I fit into that. We were discussing before the panel started that sometimes your nose is so to the grindstone that when somebody calls you and says, "Can you be on this panel to talk about these issues?" you're just kind of like, "Me, really?" Like, I'm not really sure how I fit into this, but that sounds good. So I started to make a few notes on what I wanted to say today, writing down all kinds of amazingly poignant stuff about, taking risks and trusting your instincts, and the journey is the destination, and blah, blah, blah. And I figured I'd dispense with the platitudes and show rather than tell. So I just got back from Peru, where I was doing a little bit of family vacation and some work for Lonely Planet. I'm working on a new guide for them. And part of the area that we explored while we were there is this part of the northern Peruvian highlands in the area surrounding the city of Cajamarca, which, if you know anything about Peruvian history, that's where the Spanish and the head of the Inca Empire, Atahualpa, first met, and where the Inca Empire started to fall apart. One of the things we did was we took a bus from Cajamarca to the village of Limabamba, which takes you right through the Rio Marañón Valley, which is this amazing northern Andean valley that actually, this river is one of the major tributaries to the Amazon that eventually leads to the Amazon River. To get through this valley to where we were going, which is a valley on the other side of that mountain, you have to do a zigzag switchback road of hundreds of kilometers on a single lane dirt road that goes 10,000 feet down one mountain, across the valley, and then 10,000 feet up the mountain. And as I mentioned, it was a one-lane road, but there was two-way traffic on it, as these things happen in Peru. And our journey took about 12 hours. Apparently, when the Spanish did it in the 15th century, it took more than 2 months. So I just wanted to show you a couple of images from there. This is the Rio Marañón Valley. This is taken from the window of the bus. This is how high up we were. If you see that line cut into the side of the mountain, everyone see it? That's the road. There's the road again. Literally just, and part of what's amazing here is that because the Andes are so craggy, you're coming in and out of these folds, and the vegetation's changing and the landscape is changing. This was a particularly desert part, but then you'd go around a bend and it would be cloud forest vegetation. There's the road again, going up. I believe this was going down the mountain. And I shot a little bit of video just to give you a little sense of what this experience was like. I'm a terrible videographer, and it was done with a flip camera, so be patient. But this is what this experience was like. You can see the other part of the road across the valley. Now, the bummer here is that you can't hear the cumbias the bus driver was playing at full blast, because I have the camera hanging out the window. Oh, yeah. And there it is, the Rio Marañón Valley. It's actually, if you saw the little there was a little sign at the end of the road there, which I didn't film. Apparently you get cell reception there, so that's what that sign is for. But in thinking about today, as much as I like showing my vacation photos, part of the reason I wanted to show these is because I think they're this bus ride, in a way, was kind of a great metaphor for what it's like to be a freelance writer. Kind of uncomfortable, a little frightening, full of blind curves and near misses. But in exchange, you get these moments of absolutely breathtaking beauty. And I don't think I would trade it for anything as like scary and as on the edge as you feel like you are sometimes living. It's definitely what I think I was made to do. Now, a part of what I wanted to do today is I wanted to avoid a little bit of the resume discussion. I mean, if any of you have questions about how I ended up working in a particular place, more than happy to discuss it afterwards. But I think as Dar was talking, a lot of it is ambition with sometimes being in the right place at the right time. So some of the jobs I've gotten, I have pursued doggedly. My job at Time Magazine was something I worked a long time to get. Other things I've gotten quite by accident. The public radio work I do right now was actually one of those cases of being in the right place at the right time. Somebody recommended me for a quick segment, and now I've been working for them for over a year, and I'm a contributing editor. And then I also think that there are things that affect our professional lives and our careers in ways we can never imagine. It can be something personal that shifts your voice as a writer, or a trip that makes you see things in a new way. I mean, I think in my case, one of the things that really sort of just poured gasoline on the fire in terms of my writing was my father's death. And so that's not one of those things that I say, yeah, you know, use your parents' death to fuel your artistic life. You know, I think it's a very individual journey. I think everybody's path is something that it's a high degree of circumstance and decision making. So, but what I did want to talk about was I think some of the guiding principles that I think about in terms of what keeps me doing something like this. Why is it that I'm not working 9 to 5 in an office and I'm covering art and going to the Andes and not making very much money in the process and living a somewhat like uncertain life, but also having a good time? I think my number one rule for myself in all of this is to be curious and be flexible. You know, sometimes that bus comes around a corner and you find something you totally weren't expecting, and you can resist it or you can embrace it. One of the things that is kind of hilarious, considering what an amazing art department Smith has. I cover art regularly as part of my job now. I never took an art class here. I thought art was for blowhards, you know. It's like, oh, all that talk about like recontextualizing the nature of liminal space, blah, blah, blah. You know, I was like, whatever. I was going to study something serious. I was going to go into politics. I was going to write about international relations and foreign conflicts. You know, I had this whole idea of what I was going to do, and one of my early assignments at Time Magazine happened to be an architecture story, a subject which I knew absolutely nothing about when I was given the assignment, but ended up being paired with a writer who had this deep abiding passion for the subject. He loved it. He was happy when he was writing stories about architecture. And he was also a very cool guy and a good mentor, and was able to pass on this passion and knowledge for a subject that I previously had no interest in. So I think it was something that if I had been closed off to that idea, I wouldn't be here. That sometimes it's those little things you least expect that completely change the course of your life. And so it's always nice to not put the blinds on when you're looking at the path. Look at the wide view. I think the second rule I kind of have for myself is know myself, know yourself, and this is a process that I think takes time to happen. Like I said, in college, I was sure I was going to be a foreign correspondent. I'd be covering wars. I'd be covering all kinds of disasters and mudslides and whatever. And in one of my early stories that I got assigned, I was sent to the Upper East Side in Manhattan, where some guy had killed his wife, and there had been a fire, and my job was to find the daughter and stand outside her apartment and basically put a tape recorder in her face and ask her what she felt about what was going on. And while I was standing there with this like gaggle of press waiting for this woman who's had this horrible thing happen in her life, all I could think was like, there's no way I can do this. I just can't do this. I can't talk to people who've just been in some major trauma of their lives and, you know, get the opinion. Like, it's not for me. It's work I respect. I think it's amazing. It needs to be done. But this is not something I can do. So what can I do? You know, and I think not sticking so hard to those original plans that we all set out for ourselves, that career path that we all have, you know, when we graduate from college, that we have even now, that, you know, that I still to this day, I'm like, I'm going to do X, Y, and Z, and 5 years later I'm doing something entirely different because I took a left turn somewhere else. So I think it's really been about thinking about less thinking about the specific type of career I want and more about the type of life I want for myself. That, okay, I'm a good reporter. I don't really like to cover the same subject over and over. I don't really like to go to meeting. I'm not very good in corporate settings where I have to suck up. I like to cover a wide variety of subjects. And for me, quality of life is very important. I don't necessarily want to work for drama queens. I don't want the high profile of assignment if it's going to mean that it's just going to be an undue amount of stress. So I think in many ways it's these broad themes much more than specific professional goals that define what I do. That I won't be working at the White House and I won't be working at Vogue, but that's okay with me. Like, what the niche I have managed to carve out for myself has become so much more clear because I really have a sense of who I am and what I'm good at, and also, honestly, what gives me pleasure. The third thing that I think guides just about everything I do is to have fun. I think when people feel joy in their work, you know it, other people know it, your boss knows it, the people who give assignments know it. I cover art and travel, and I honestly can't tell you how grim some art and travel writers are. I'm like, come on, guys, like, you're covering amazing stuff. You're getting to do stuff like this. But it's very serious. And I feel that when you can give people a sense of the joy that you feel doing what you do, that people feel that and they want to be a part of it. They want to be with you. They want to read you. They want to see you sing. They want to see you perform. And I kind of, rather than sort of speaking about like a personal example, I wanted to provide an example related to this essayist named Pico Iyer, who I'm a huge fan of. I don't know if you're familiar with his work. He's a travel writer and an essayist. He wrote a collection on his travels through Asia called Video Night in Kathmandu. And for his book, Global Soul, he spent 2 weeks living inside the LA airport. Something that strikes me as a nightmare. I don't know how you guys feel about airports, but I think airports are pretty awful. I deal with them a lot. But he wrote this incredibly moving essay about what airports mean and what they are and the type of people you find there and the type of institutions you find there and the ways in which humans interact while they're there. And it was such a thrill to read that it was at the end of it, it's like he almost made me want to go to an airport so that I could experience it with the sort of same sense of awe and wonder that he had. So he had this to say about the experience, and I think it's something that really applies to what we're talking about here, that success, that leading an unconventional life, it's not an end point. Like, you don't do some stuff and then you just get there. It's a process, and it's an ever-evolving process. It's a changing process. It's a process in which you're constantly changing your mind. And what Iyer has to say about airports, I think, applies to this situation. The curious, sometimes chill reality of the modern world is that we spend much of our time not in A or B, but in the passage from one to the other, the empty spaces in between. This is our empty space. You know, it's a journey. That is an empty space. I just say, you know, enjoy the ride. Like that. That's the best thing you can do. Thank you.